Reproduction. We're all programmed to do it, and we all know it happened to put us on Earth. But what will happen when the whole process happens in space, or in a low-gravity environment like the Moon or Mars? Earth is 1g. It is how we define gravity after all, by the force we are all accustomed to. So the Moon is 0.166 g, which means that it is 1/6 the gravity of Earth. Mars, however, is comparatively stronger at 0.38 g, which is essentially twice that of the Moon. With how weak the Moon's gravity is, it is actually surprising that something only twice as strong like Mars would make that much of a difference. But it might, and that's the problem. We just don't know how truly prolonged gravity will affect humans. And while Mars could be quite survivable, long-term exposure to the extreme low gravity of the Moon might result in permanent disability. Mars might cause the same thing. They even made a movie about that possibility. Some companies are looking for ways to solve this with things like giant spinning drums set into the lunar or Martian surfaces that use existing gravity combined with rotational gravity to provide a space where humans can grow and develop in relative normalcy. But that most likely won't be available for the first few generations of lunar and Martian colonists. It is very easy to imagine how the first children would be born on the Moon. We set up some mining colonies for helium-3, or even just some resources to support research and ice extraction for fuel. This creates day jobs on the Moon. This also means people living, relaxing, and going about their daily lives. Even if they sign no fraternization contracts for their stints on the Moon, it will almost certainly happen. Someone gets pregnant, and they either don't know or hide it long enough for it to be a serious problem if they try to return to Earth. The G-forces of re-entry could cause serious problems with the pregnancy, miscarriage, or other medical issues, so the mother decides to have the baby there, in space, on the Moon. This first lunar child would almost certainly have at least a few major differences from normal children. Their bone density would most likely be much lower, and they wouldn't develop nearly as much muscle mass. The lower gravity could also affect other stages of development, such as crawling, cognitive acuity, spatial orientation, eyesight, heart development, and almost every other part of the body. Some of these developments we can predict based on data from long-term adult stays in space. Others will be impossible to know until we have a chance to watch it actually happen. And that is truly an area where our science is lacking. We have studied people in long-term microgravity, but not truly long-term, like decades. We also haven't studied them in low gravity. There could be a world of difference between true microgravity that is experienced in orbit and the low gravity experienced on the Moon. One thing is for certain, however, and that is the people raised on the Moon will have distinctive biological differences from people born and raised on the Earth. Even though these people raised in space will be genetically the same, their bodies and life experiences will be completely different. These sort of differences are the sort of things that can cause cultural differences. Combine that with the potential inability to return to Earth because the high gravity could kill them, and you inevitably have an isolated, physically and mentally different population. This is the sort of thing that will always cause cultural divergence from the source population. Why would anyone born, raised, and identifying completely with the Moon have any loyalty to their parents' original nation back on Earth? Why would they prioritize the needs of Earth rather than their own? What will happen when these people no longer want to be governed by what is to them an alien planet they have never known? I find it likely that it won't be long after lunar colonization before people start clamoring for self-governance, and not the sham semblance of self-government that most people envision where it is actually under the auspices of the UN or something like that. I mean an independent lunar nation. While the physical differences between Earthlings and Martians may not be as extreme as those between Earth and people born on the Moon, it is likely that the distances involved would more than make up for that in terms of culture. It is a comparatively easy prospect to fly from the Moon to Earth, but returning from Mars is the work of months or even years, depending on your methods and when you leave. Isolation is one of the greatest factors in cultural genesis. Combine that with the fact that most often, the first people to colonize an area are always the most ideological driven from the population in their source nation, and you have a recipe for a dynamic situation where new cultures can arise with shocking speed and regularity. Throw some people from Texas and Australia together in a self-contained Martian colony for 10 years, and I guarantee you will get something new on the other side. Even if we somehow don't populate these places until we have cracked the gravity problem or installed gravity enhancement modules, the people who live there will become self-reliant in a way that not even early European colonists in North America experienced. Both lunar and Martian colonists would certainly have shipments of supplies. But on Mars, you would be responsible for your own safety, water, air, and to a large extent, food. As I discussed in my Gun Rights in Space video, the same elements that caused American gun culture will only be intensified in space. Those are the same elements that cause the spirit of independence, self-reliance, and distrust of external authority. I find it highly likely that people born, living, and dying on Mars would be disinclined to listen to the opinion of people on Earth about how they should structure their society and live their lives. But this certainly won't stop those on Earth from trying to have a say in how lunar people and Martians live. Be it the fact that they financed the colonization efforts, still hold the citizenship of the people on Mars and the Moon, or a simple yet common sense of moral superiority, Earthlings will inevitably feel entitled to rule the colonies. It won't just be the one world government WEF crowd either. People in the US and other founding countries will feel as if they deserve to control the colony. This could come from completely altruistic sentiments, like simply feeling invested in the Martian colony after watching it being built from the ground up over a lifetime. But it doesn't matter. People on Earth will not have the moral right to dictate how people on Mars should live, and eventually may not have the ability to force their will over such a long distance. In space, you don't have a lot of options for scale of force. Interplanetary war is the ultimate expression of you either win or you are dead. So we must hope future generations of Earthlings and Martians will be able to settle their differences without violence, because as silly as it may seem to talk about, Martians, as a geopolitical entity, are an inevitability. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.